Hello fellow audiophiles, I am Wave Theory and we're back to do another sound review, and that is going to be the HiFiMan Arya Stealth Magnet Edition. And I've had this for a couple of weeks now, so it's time to dig into this one. Alright, just a quick reminder to please like and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and look for ways to continue to support me going forward, which I hope to put up soon. I know I've been saying that for a long time. It's busy around here, okay, and the new semester is just starting, so lots to do, but I am going to try to get those new ways up there as soon as I can, so please be on the lookout for those. Alright, so the HiFiMan Arya Stealth Magnet Edition, a $1,600 US planar magnetic open back around the ear headphone, okay, from, of course, HiFiMan. Now, what this is just, it's a revision of the HiFiMan Arya series, which was HiFiMan's entry into like the $1,400 to $1,800-ish tier for headphones. All that, and what they have done is just trickle down the stealth magnet tech, which is just their description for how they build the magnet array around the driver in here. But that tech first appeared in their Susvara model, way up at the top of the line, and it has since trickled down into things like the HE1000 SE, and even further. Like, I think there's now an Ananda with a stealth magnet system in it. That new Edition XS at $500 has the stealth magnets, and I'm pretty sure that, well, there's an HE400 down there as well, even cheaper yet, with the stealth magnet tech in it. So, well, yeah, let's talk about this one. Now, I reviewed the Arya V2 back in early 2021, and that was a really good headphone. I liked it a lot. I thought it was neutral warm in its signature, but it had amazing soundstage and very good detail retrieval. The problem that I had with the particulate, maybe it was just the unit that I had, was that there was a little bit too much energy somewhere in the treble that gave me a headache after a while, and I could not listen to them very long. So this has been a popular model here, the Stealth Magnet Edition, lately, and so when I got a chance to review this one, I jumped at it. So let's see, what it's all about sound and build wise. So, the build is, it's the classic HiFiMan with the egg-shaped cups and all of that there. It's just very industrial looking, black everywhere, pretty much. It has this suspension strap with the headband on there, just like their other models in this egg-shaped cup line. So, it's comfortable. This design is, it's one of those it's not broke so don't fix it kind of things. Like, it's quite comfortable, and I can wear it for a fairly long period of time. The only exception to that is the clamp force on this unit anyway, and this might just be a newer unit since it's a newer model headphone anyhow. It clamps a little hard, and every once in a while I got a little bit of pain on my jaw there. But not all the time, not very often, and but it is a thing that you might want to be mindful of. But I think in time and with enough flexure like that, this will loosen up, because my my HE1000 V2 has this same basic build, and it's not nearly as tight in the clamp. I had an Edition X V2 back a while ago, which is again this same basic design, and that one had a much looser clamp too. So I think that will probably work itself out. All right, let's get to the sound. So, where the Arya V2 was neutral bright, what this one is actually more of a V shape. They have kept most of the treble energy, and I'm going from memory here, so this might not be 100% accurate, but I remember the Arya V2 being a bit on the brighter side, and this keeps most of that brightness, but I think tames it a little bit because it's not as hot and sharp up top as the V2 was, but they've also added in a fair amount of warmth to it. So I think it's almost, not almost, I would say that this has a more V-shaped signature with a slight emphasis in the bass and then a little bit more up in the treble energy. Like, I don't know that it's quite U. I think it's a little bit more V. But but there is a little bit of bass emphasis that was not present, and a little bit more warmth that was not present on the V2. Honestly, this sounds a lot like the HE1000 V2 or the HEC V2, which I have here because it is my personal high-end headphone. Okay, these two actually sound very similar signature-wise. Okay, so if you've heard this and saw my review of this, very similar signature, and I'll get more into the comparison of these two here in a moment, but that's what it sounds like to me a lot. This one does anyway. So the $1,600 price point is crowded for headphones. I mean, you've seen just on my channel, I have reviewed the ZMF-O Tour, both of the Focal Clears, the LCD-X, the 2021 edition. Now, I mean, that one's more $1,200. Okay, but then you've got the Fostex TH900 series, you have the Sennheiser HD800S, which I think is $1,700. Anyway, you have a bunch of headphones from big name headphone companies, like all around there. So what this one does to stand out in that group is it still has the excellent detail retrieval. Okay, if it's not the most resolving headphone at $1,600, it's very close to it. Okay, and then it also just has that big, grandiose HiFiMan staging. Right, it's like it has that quality like the Arya had, like the Edition XV2 had, like the HE1000 V2 often has, where it just kind of makes everything sound like you're in the first, second, or third row of a big concert. Okay, just everything is big and grand, right? And so there's really big soundstage width, height. There's a little bit of depth to it to go as well there. Not as balanced in the depth as it is in the width and height, but that's pretty common for headphones in this price range. Okay, but still very large sound staging, and then pretty excellent sound imaging and separation within that soundstage. So at the $1,600 price point, okay, excellent detail retrieval, huge soundstage with class-leading imaging and separation, I would say. And then also, maybe not the best, but very strong timbre to go with it. You know, just that whole thing of voices sounding like voices, and pianos sounding like pianos, and drums sounding like drums, and so forth. Fairly natural, realistic-ish timbre going on here as well. Maybe not quite as silky and natural through the mids as like the O Tour was, but honestly not far behind. Okay, and then this one does better in the low end and in the treble timbre than the O Tour does as well. To go along with the excellent detail retrieval that I mentioned, there's a pretty good texture, probably, again, like, because it's closely related to detail retrieval and in micro detail and whatnot, like this does some of the best bass texturing at the $1,600 price point as well, I think. So, I mean, needless to say, I think it's excellent. I didn't have any problems with the treble on this, the Stealth edition here. I mean, it is a little bit brighter than neutral up top, but I found it to only rarely be sibilant or sharp or anything like that on most of the gear that I powered it with. And it's one of those things, I mean, it sounds cliche, but usually it only went sibilant when the recording was sibilant, which, I mean, is a good thing, right? Yeah. So, yeah, sound-wise, really good, really solid entry into the $1,600 price point. I think I forgot to mention earlier, it is a dual 3.5 millimeter cable entry. And just real quick, the stock cable, which I really didn't use very much. If you remember from previous HiFiMan reviews, they have what I called a catheter cable, where the stock cable was like in this rubber tubing. They haven't done that here, but this is the stock cable, and I really didn't use it because all I did was take the twist tie off of it, and it just stuck like this. And it's just now starting to uncoil a little bit. So anyway, HiFiMan still needs to work on their stock cabling. All right. So where was I back with that little interlude? We were talking about sound still. I mean, this really is an excellent piece. at $1,600. Okay, a really solid entry at that price point. The only thing I didn't talk about was like the punch and the slam, like the low end hit, the macro dynamics, that sort of thing. It is there. It will punch you every now and then when the recording calls for it. Again, it is not as punchy or slammy as a Focal or a Fostex, but it's not far behind those either. I would say it's very close to like an Odyssey LCD series level of punch and slam there. So that's also, I think, an improvement over what the Arya V2 did as well. So yeah, lots of good stuff going on here. I want to come back to then the comparison with the HE1000 V2. And I think there are a couple of points to be made here there. Because one, they have almost identical signatures as far as frequency response goes. This one might have just a hair bit more treble energy yet, and maybe just a hair bit more warmth. Not a lot, okay? They're very close. The Arya V2, and even the original Arya, some reviewers called it a baby HEC V2. I didn't agree with that, because I thought the Arya was tuned to neutral bright, and this is a little bit more V-shaped with a lot more warmth and more low-end rumble, a little bit better macrodynamic punch in the deep end and all of that. Also, much more resolving than the Arya V2 was. This one, I think you can fairly say, is a baby HEC V2, because their signatures are so close. And this one really reminded me of this one right as I put it on. I'm like, oh, that sounds like my HEC V2. And so, I mean, I love this headphone, so that was one good thing for it. As I listened to these and compared back and forth, I did find that the HEC V2 has noticeably more resolution, particularly in the micro details, like the texturing is better here, some of the layering is better, and then the spatial presentation is just a little bit more coherent and accurate and well defined on this one than it is on the Arya Stealth. Okay, so I still think that this is the better headphone, but now I can finally say that there is an Arya model that is a baby HEC V2. It sounds very similar, just not quite as technically strong across the board as this one. So, good job, HiFiMan. You really knocked it out of the park with this one, I think, is really good. Now, the only qualm that I would have with this one at $1,600 is that the HEC V2 can often be found for about that price on the used market, at least here in the United States. And so that's where the tricky part comes in. If you are comfortable buying used, and you can get this in that middle thousand range from, say, you know, $1,500 to $1,800-ish dollars, somewhere in there, it is the better buy than this at $1,600, okay? It is the better headphone, okay? Comfortably so. Not saying this one is bad, just that this one is comfortably the better headphone over this one, right? And so just keep that in mind. This one at a used price someday, if it gets down into the $1,200 range or something like that, then maybe the picture changes a little bit, okay? Maybe more like $1,000 if this is available at $1,500, but still, that is just something to keep in mind going forward. So that's the only reservation I would have about recommending the Arya Stealth, is that if you have one of these sitting out there in good shape on the used market for about the same price, it is easily the better buy. But that's it. There's really nothing wrong with this headphone in itself that I can pick out so far. And then, real quick, I will mention what amps I use to drive this, because I like to say that and I haven't mentioned it yet. Most of my listening occurred on using my Berkeley Alpha Series 2 DAC feeding my Vioelectric HPA V281 amplifier. Excellent pairing there. I tried this on my Canon HA1A Mark II tube amp because the Arya V2 sounded pretty good on that one, and I didn't like this one as much on that tube amp. I think this one drives just a little bit easier than the Arya V2 did. And this one here, like the HEC V2, is a little bit harder to drive than this one too. And this one also sounds good on that HA1A Mark II tube amp for the most part. Not the best combo, but it works. Okay, and I think this one is a little bit easier drive, and that K and tube amp doesn't really like easy drive planars or easier drive planars, so didn't like that one as much. However, the Chord Hugo 2 sounded really good through this as well. That was a good match, whereas this does not work on the Hugo 2, in my opinion. But this one sounded pretty good. Okay, so yeah, those were most of the signal chains that I tried there. So I will leave it there. This gets my recommendation. Okay, really good headphone. And again, only if you can get this for about the same amount of money. That's the only problem with the Arya Stealth, which is not really a problem with this in itself. It's just the state of the market. All right, I am Wave Theory. That has been my review of the HiFiMan Arya Stealth Magnet Edition. And so I will see you guys in the next review, and enjoy the music. Come on.